A remote coastal town of Whispering Cove, perched precariously on the rugged cliffs of Nova Scotia's eastern shore, had long been a haven for those seeking solitude and escape from the chaos of modern life. With a population of just under 3,000 souls, it was a place where the rhythmic crashing of waves against weather-worn rocks served as a constant backdrop to daily life. The town's economy revolved around its small but thriving fishing industry and a modestly successful tourist trade that catered to those drawn to its stark, haunting beauty. At the heart of Whispering Cove stood Gull's Nest Academy, a prestigious private school that had, for generations, educated the children of the town's most prominent families alongside a select few scholarship students from less affluent backgrounds. The school's gray stone buildings, which seemed to grow organically from the very cliffs themselves, were a testament to the resilience and determination of the town's founders. It was here, amidst the salt-tinged air and ever-present mist, that 16-year-old Liam Blackwood had always been regarded as something of an enigma. The son of the town's most respected doctor and a gifted marine biologist, Liam was a study in contrasts. Brilliantly intelligent and unfailingly courteous, he nonetheless exuded an aura of detachment that kept even his closest peers at arm's length. On the morning of November 3, 2023, as the first bitter winds of winter began to howl across the choppy waters of the Atlantic, Whispering Cove awoke to a horror that would shatter its centuries-old tranquility and forever alter the fabric of the tight-knit community. The day began like any other, with fishermen setting out before dawn and students making their way along the winding coastal road to Gull's Nest Academy. It wasn't until 8:45 a.m., when Liam Blackwood failed to appear for his advanced calculus class, that the first whispers of concern began to circulate. Mrs. Eleanor Marston, Liam's calculus teacher and a fixture at the academy for over 3 decades, felt an inexplicable chill run down her spine as she marked the boy absent. In all his years at Gull's Nest, Liam had never once missed a class without prior notice. Her unease grew as the morning wore on, and by lunchtime, with still no word from the Blackwood family, she made her way to Headmaster Jonathan Fairfax's office. "Jonathan," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I can't shake this feeling that something's terribly wrong. Liam's never missed a day without notice, and now I hear his sister Amelia hasn't shown up either." Fairfax, a distinguished man in his early 60s with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes, leaned back in his leather chair, his brow furrowed in concern. "Have you tried calling the house, Eleanor?" "3 times, she replied, wringing her hands. "There's been no answer. I even called Dr. Blackwood's clinic, but his receptionist said he never showed up for his morning appointments." The headmaster's frown deepened. "That is most unusual. Perhaps we should ask Chief Constable MacLeod to perform a wellness check. Better safe than sorry in a town like ours." With a nod of agreement from Mrs. Marston, Headmaster Fairfax picked up the phone and dialed the local police station. Chief Constable Angus MacLeod, a burly man with a thick salt and pepper beard and eyes that had seen too much in his 30 years on the force, answered on the second ring. Angus, Fairfax began, his tone grave, "We have a situation here that requires your attention. The Blackwood children haven't shown up for school, and we can't reach their parents. Given Dr. Blackwood's standing in the community and his impeccable record, we're quite concerned." There was a pause on the other end of the line before MacLeod's gruff voice responded, "I understand, Jonathan. I'll head over there myself right away. I'll call you back once I've checked things out." As MacLeod's police cruiser wound its way along the cliffside road toward the Blackwood residence, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of his stomach. In a town as small as Whispering Cove, where everyone's business was common knowledge, the Blackwoods had always stood out for their privacy. Dr. Alexander Blackwood, while respected for his medical expertise, was known to be somewhat aloof, and his wife, Dr. Evelyn Blackwood, spent more time with her marine specimens than with the other townspeople. The Blackwood home, A grand Victorian structure perched on a bluff overlooking the churning ocean came into view as McLeod rounded the final bend. The house, with its weather-beaten shingles and ornate gingerbread trim, had always seemed to McLeod like something out of a Gothic novel. Today, shrouded in mist and eerily silent, it looked downright sinister. McLeod parked his cruiser and approached the front door, his hand instinctively resting on his holstered weapon. The crunch of gravel under his boots seemed unnaturally loud in the stillness that enveloped the property. He rang the doorbell and waited, straining to hear any sound of movement from within. After a full minute of silence, he knocked firmly on the heavy oak door. "Dr. Blackwood? Mrs. Blackwood? This is Chief Constable McLeod. Is everything all right in there?" His words were met with more silence. McLeod's unease grew as he peered through the adjacent window, cupping his hands around his eyes to block the glare. The interior of the house was dark, but as his eyes adjusted, he could make out what appeared to be an overturned lamp in the entryway. Years of experience told McLeod that something was very wrong. He reached for his radio, calling for backup and an ambulance as a precautionary measure. Then, with a deep breath to steel his nerves, he tried the door handle. To his surprise, it turned easily in his grasp. "Hello? This is the police. I'm coming in to check on your welfare," he called out as he slowly pushed the door open, the creak of its hinges sounding ominous in the oppressive silence. The moment McLeod stepped inside, the coppery scent of blood assaulted his nostrils. His hand flew to his weapon, drawing it smoothly as his eyes darted around the dimly lit entryway. The overturned lamp he'd spotted earlier lay on the hardwood floor, surrounded by shards of a shattered vase and scattered flowers. But it was the smeared handprint on the wall, dark and unmistakably made of blood, that sent a chill down McLeod's spine. He'd seen his fair share of crime scenes in his career, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to discover in the Blackwood home. Moving cautiously, his weapon at the ready, McLeod made his way deeper into the house. The living room, visible through an archway to his left, appeared undisturbed. But as he approached the stairs leading to the second floor, he saw more signs of a struggle, a broken banister, smears of blood on the steps. "Dr. Blackwood? Mrs. Blackwood? Liam?" "Amelia," he called out, his voice echoing in the stillness. "This is Chief Constable McLeod. If anyone can hear me, please respond." And the lack of response only heightened his sense of dread. As he ascended the stairs, the smell of blood grew stronger, mixing with another, equally unsettling odor that McLeod recognized all too well, the unmistakable scent of death. At the top of the stairs, McLeod paused, his ears straining for any sound. The upper hallway stretched before him, 4 closed doors leading off to what he assumed were bedrooms and a bathroom. The door at the far end of the hall was ajar, a thin streak of crimson visible on the carpet leading into the room. With his heart pounding in his chest, McLeod approached the partially open door. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he might find, and then pushed it open with his foot, his gun trained on the interior of the room. The scene that greeted him would haunt his dreams for years to come. Dr. Alexander Blackwood lay sprawled on the floor, his once immaculate white shirt now a canvas of red. His eyes, wide and glassy, stared unseeing at the ceiling. Beside him, slumped in an armchair, was his wife, Dr. Evelyn Blackwood. Her throat had been cut with surgical precision, the wound gaping obscenely in the dim light filtering through the drawn curtains. McLeod fought the urge to retch as he quickly cleared the room, his trained eyes taking in every gruesome detail. It was clear that both victims had been dead for several hours. But where were the children? As if in answer to his unspoken question, a muffled thump sounded from somewhere down the hall. McLeod whirled around, his weapon at the ready, every nerve in his body on high alert. He moved swiftly but cautiously back into the hallway, his eyes darting from door to door. Another thump, louder this time, emanated from behind the door directly across from the master bedroom, McLeod approached, noting a dark stain seeping out from under the door. He reached for the handle, took a deep breath, and flung the door open. The room beyond was a scene of utter carnage. Blood spattered the walls and pooled on the floor, and in the center of this grotesque tableau lay the body of a young girl, Amelia Blackwood, her long blonde hair matted with blood, her lifeless eyes staring at the door as if accusing McLeod of arriving too late to save her. But it was the figure huddled in the corner that drew McLeod's immediate attention. Liam Blackwood, his clothes soaked in blood, rocked back and forth, a blood-stained kitchen knife clutched in his trembling hands. As McLeod entered the room, the boy's head snapped up, his eyes wild and unfocused. Liam, McLeod said softly, his gun trained on the teenager, "I need you to put the knife down, son. It's over now. Just put the knife down and we can talk about this." For a moment it seemed as though Liam hadn't heard him. Then, slowly, the boy's gaze focused on McLeod. A chilling smile spread across his blood-spattered face. "You're right," Chief Constable Liam said, his voice unnaturally calm. "It is over. They're all gone now. All of them. And I'm finally free." With those words, Liam Blackwood, the quiet, brilliant boy who had always been the pride of Whispering Cove, let the bloody knife clatter to the floor and held out his hands to be cuffed. As the wail of approaching sirens pierced the air, Chief Constable Angus McLeod knew that nothing in Whispering Cove would ever be the same again. The schoolboy who slaughtered his entire family had forever shattered the town's peaceful facade, leaving in his wake a mystery that would take months to unravel and a community struggling to comprehend the darkness that had been hiding in plain sight all along. The news of the Blackwood family massacre spread through Whispering Cove like wildfire, leaving shock and disbelief in its wake. The once peaceful town found itself thrust into the national spotlight, as news vans and journalists descended upon the quiet coastal community, hungry for details about the horrific crime that had shattered its tranquility. In the days that followed, Chief Constable McLeod worked tirelessly alongside a team of investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The Blackwood residence, once a symbol of success and respectability, had been transformed into a grisly crime scene, every inch meticulously examined for clues that might shed light on the unthinkable events that had transpired within its walls. Dr. Fiona Chen, the lead forensic pathologist assigned to the case, stood in the makeshift morgue set up in the town's community center, her face grim as she surveyed the bodies of the Blackwood family. "The level of violence here is extraordinary," she murmured to McLeod, who stood beside her, his face ashen. "The parents and the sister, Amelia, they all show signs of a frenzied attack. Multiple stab wounds, some hesitation marks, but also some that suggest a level of anatomical knowledge." McLeod nodded, his throat tight. Liam was at the top of his class in biology. He'd even started shadowing his father at the clinic on weekends. Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose. That would explain the precision of some of these wounds. "But there's something else, Chief Constable. The father, Dr. Blackwood. His wounds are different, more controlled almost, experimental." A chill ran down McLeod's spine as he processed this information. The image of Liam's eerily calm face in the aftermath of the killings flashed through his mind. What could have driven a seemingly normal teenager to commit such a heinous act? And why the apparent difference in the manner of his father's death? As the investigation progressed, a clearer picture of the events leading up to the massacre began to emerge. Interviews with Liam's classmates and teachers at Gull's Nest Academy painted a picture of a brilliant but increasingly troubled young man. He was always so quiet, so polite, Mrs. Marston told the investigators, her eyes brimming with tears. But in the past few months, something changed. He became distant. His work was still impeccable, but there was a coldness to him that I'd never seen before. Liam's best friend, a lanky boy named Trevor McNeil, provided even more disturbing insights. Liam started talking about some weird stuff he confided, his voice barely above a whisper. He'd go on about how his parents didn't understand him, how they were holding him back, and he was obsessed with this idea that his dad was hiding something big from the family. As the investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a web of secrets and lies that had been festering beneath the surface of the Blackwood family's seemingly perfect facade. Dr. Alexander Blackwood, it turned out, had been leading a double life. The financial records revealed large sums of money being funneled into an offshore account, and correspondence found hidden in his office safe pointed to a years-long affair with a former colleague in Halifax. But it was the discovery of a hidden laboratory in the basement of the Blackwood home that truly blew the case wide open. Behind a false wall in Dr. Blackwood's wine cellar, investigators found a state-of-the-art facility filled with advanced medical equipment and refrigeration units containing numerous biological samples. "This isn't just some hobby setup," Dr. Chen remarked as she surveyed the lab. Whatever Dr. Blackwood was doing down here, it was serious, and almost certainly illegal. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, a disturbing theory emerged. Had Liam discovered his father's secret research? And if so, what role had this discovery played in the brutal slaughter of his entire family? The answer to these questions would come from Liam himself in a series of chilling interviews conducted by Dr. Elizabeth Holbrook, a renowned forensic psychiatrist brought in to evaluate the young killer's mental state. In the stark confines of the juvenile detention center where Liam was being held, Dr. Holbrook sat across from the boy who had captivated and horrified the nation. Despite the gravity of his crimes, Liam appeared calm and composed, his intelligent eyes studying the psychiatrist with an unsettling intensity. "Tell me about your relationship with your father," Liam. Dr. Holbrook began, her voice gentle but probing. Liam's lips curled into a bitter smile. "My father," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "was a fraud. A liar. He pretended to be this pillar of the community, this paragon of medical ethics. But it was all a sham." As the interview progressed, Liam revealed the events that had led to that fateful night. He spoke of accidentally stumbling upon his father's secret lab months earlier, of confronting him about the nature of his research. He was experimenting with genetic manipulation, Liam explained, a feverish light in his eyes, trying to create some kind of enhancement. He said it was for the greater good, that it could revolutionize medicine. But he was using unauthorized human trials. People died. Dr. Holbrook leaned forward, her pen poised above her notepad. "And this discovery, how did it make you feel, Liam?" The boy's face darkened. "At first I was fascinated. I wanted to help, to be part of something groundbreaking. But then I realized the truth. My father, he'd been experimenting on us, on me, for years." The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Subsequent analysis of the samples found in Dr. Blackwood's secret lab confirmed Liam's claims. The brilliant doctor had indeed been conducting illegal genetic experiments, using his own family as unwitting test subjects. But this shocking discovery only served to deepen the mystery surrounding the brutal killings. If Liam had known about his father's experiments for months, what had finally pushed him over the edge? The answer, when it came, was as unexpected as it was heartbreaking. In their final interview session, Liam revealed the true catalyst for his murderous rampage. "I overheard them talking," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My parents, they were arguing about the experiments, about me. My mother, she wanted to stop it all, to go to the authorities. But my father, he said it was too late, that I was too far gone." Liam's eyes, usually so cold and detached, filled with a mix of pain and rage. "He said I was becoming unstable, dangerous, that I needed to be contained. They were going to send me away, lock me up somewhere. My own parents, treating me like some kind of monster they'd created." Dr. Holbrook's heart raced as she realized she was finally reaching the core of Liam's motivations. "And that's when you decided to kill them." Liam nodded slowly, a single tear tracing its way down his cheek. "I couldn't let them do it. I couldn't let them take away my future, my freedom. So I decided to take theirs instead." As the full story of the Blackwood family massacre came to light, the town of Whispering Cove found itself grappling with a tragedy that defied simple explanation. The case had exposed the darkness that could lurk behind even the most respectable facades, the devastating consequences of secrets and lies, and the fragile nature of the human psyche. In the months that followed, as Liam Blackwood awaited trial, the community struggled to come to terms with what had happened. The Gull's Nest Academy established a scholarship in memory of Amelia Blackwood, while the town council voted to convert the Blackwood residence into a community center, hoping to transform a place of horror into one of healing. But for those closest to the case, the scars ran deep. Chief Constable McLeod found himself haunted by the memory of Liam's calm demeanor in the blood-soaked room, while Dr. Holbrook grappled with the chilling realization that the line between victim and perpetrator could be terrifyingly blurred. As the date of the trial approached, media attention once again focused on Whispering Cove. The question on everyone's mind was not just whether Liam Blackwood be found guilty. His confession had left little doubt on that front, but whether the justice system was equipped to deal with a case of such complexity and moral ambiguity. The trial itself was a sensational affair, drawing media attention from across the globe. The courthouse in the nearby city of Halifax was besieged by reporters and curious onlookers, all eager to catch a glimpse of the teenager who had committed such an unthinkable act. Inside the courtroom, Liam Blackwood sat impassively as the prosecution laid out its case. The evidence was damning DNA analysis, blood spatter patterns, and the murder weapon all pointed unequivocally to Liam's guilt. But it was the psychological aspect of the case that captivated the public's attention. Dr. Elizabeth Holbrook took the stand as an expert witness, her testimony painting a complex picture of a brilliant young mind warped by betrayal and fear. In Liam Blackwood, we see a tragic confluence of factors she explained to the rapt courtroom. A gifted child, subjected to unethical experimentation by the very people meant to protect him, who ultimately chose violence as a means of self-preservation. The defense team, led by renowned criminal lawyer Marcus Elliott, didn't contest Liam's actions. Instead, they focused on building a case for diminished responsibility, arguing that the psychological trauma inflicted by his parents' betrayal, combined with the unknown effects of Dr. Blackwood's genetic experimentation, had left Liam incapable of fully understanding or controlling his actions. As the trial progressed, new and disturbing details emerged about the extent of Dr. Blackwood's experiments. Former colleagues came forward, speaking of their growing concerns over the years about the doctor's increasingly erratic behavior and ethically questionable research methods. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a journal found hidden in Dr. Blackwood's office detailing the progress of his human trials. The entries pertaining to Liam were especially chilling. Subject L continues to show remarkable cognitive enhancement. Memory retention and problem-solving abilities far exceed expectations. However, concerns about emotional stability are growing. Increased aggression and paranoia noted. Further observation required. The prosecution, led by the formidable district attorney Sophia Chen, argued that regardless of the circumstances, Liam's actions were premeditated and showed a clear intent to kill. The evidence shows that Liam Blackwood methodically planned and executed the murder of his entire family, Chen stated in her closing arguments. While the circumstances of his upbringing are undoubtedly tragic, they do not excuse the cold-blooded killing of 3 innocent people. As the trial neared its conclusion, all of Whispering Cove seemed to hold its breath. The case had forced the tight-knit community to confront uncomfortable truths about one of its most prominent families, and had shattered the illusion of safety and normalcy that had long been the town's hallmark. On the final day of the trial, Liam himself took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as the young man, looking pale and drawn in his ill-fitting suit, began to speak. "I know that what I did was wrong," Liam said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know that I can never undo the harm I've caused. But in that moment, When I realized that my own parents saw me as nothing more than a failed experiment to be discarded, something inside me broke. Tears began to roll down Liam's cheeks as he continued. I was terrified of what they might do to me, of being locked away and forgotten. I convinced myself that I had no choice, that it was either them or me. But I know now that there's no justification for what I did. I only wish I could go back and make a different choice. The jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching a verdict. As the foreman stood to deliver their decision, you could have heard a pin drop in the crowded courtroom. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Dr. Alexander Blackwood, we find the defendant, Liam Blackwood, guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Dr. Evelyn Blackwood, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Amelia Blackwood, we find the defendant guilty. A collective gasp went up from the gallery as the verdicts were read. Liam stood motionless, his face a mask of resignation as he absorbed the weight of the jury's decision. The sentencing hearing, held 2 weeks later, was a somber affair. Judge Harriet Watkins, a veteran of the bench known for her no-nonsense approach, addressed Liam directly before pronouncing her decision. "Mr. Blackwood, the crimes you have committed are among the most heinous this court has ever seen," Judge Watkins began. "The loss of life, the betrayal of family, the sheer brutality of your actions, all of these factors demand the most serious punishment our justice system can provide." She paused, her gaze fixed on Liam. "However, this court cannot ignore the extraordinary circumstances that led to these tragic events. The unethical and illegal actions of your father, the psychological trauma you endured, and your young age at the time of the crimes must all be taken into consideration." With that, Judge Watkins delivered her sentence: life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years for each count of murder, to be served concurrently. Additionally, she mandated intensive psychological treatment and continued study of the effects of Dr. Blackwood's experimentation on Liam's mental and physical health. As Liam was led away in handcuffs, the case that had captivated the nation for months finally came to a close. But for the people of Whispering Cove, the aftermath of the Blackwood family massacre would be felt for years to come.